My name is Grace. I am 27 years old. I work as a florist. I spend my days surrounding myself with beautiful flowers, but my heart feels like a dry desert. 1 year ago, I made a choice that looked like a happy ending, but it was actually a beautiful lie. Many people look at my perfect husband and my perfect life, but they don't see the ghost living inside me. To understand my current life, I must look back at my past. 2 years ago, I was deeply in love with a man named Ethan. He was my world. We shared everything. But one cold autumn evening, Ethan left me. He didn't explain why. He just walked out of my life and never came back. My heart didn't just break. It felt like a heavy stone in my chest. I spent many months crying. My pillow was always wet. My flower shop, once full of life, now felt like a lonely place. Then I met Julian. He was an architect, 4 years older than me. Julian was a good man. He was stable, calm, and very gentle. When he saw me, he didn't see a florist. He saw a woman in pain. He started to visit me every day. He brought me warm tea and listened to my long silences. He gave me small gifts and wrote sweet notes. He was so patient with me. I felt his kindness every day, but I didn't feel any magic. I was in a very dark place. I felt like I was drowning in a deep ocean of regret. Julian felt like a wooden boat. He was my only hope to stay alive. One night, while we were walking by the river, Julian took my hand. He looked into my eyes and asked me to marry him. I took a deep breath. My heart was silent, but my mind was screaming for peace. I whispered to myself, if I say yes, maybe the pain will finally stop. So, I said yes. I married him not because of love, but because I wanted to move on. I thought Julian was my bridge to a new life, but I was only using him to run away. On our wedding day, Julian looked so happy. He smiled at everyone, but as I walked toward him, I felt empty. I knew I was making a big mistake. I knew I was lying to a good person, but I was too scared to be alone. I just wanted to hide from the ghost of Ethan. Life with Julian was perfect, but it felt like a cage. Julian was an architect. He liked everything to be in the right place. One morning, he looked at me and said, Grace, you look tired. Why do you work so hard at the flower shop? You don't need to work, honey. I can build the world for you. Stay home and be happy. I smiled, but I felt trapped. I whispered to myself, but the shop is the only place where I feel like me. I didn't say anything. Julian was so kind, but his kindness felt like a heavy blanket. For a moment, I thought maybe I was wrong. On a sunny Sunday, Julian planned a picnic. We went to a small park near the lake. The grass was green, and the air was fresh. Julian made sandwiches and played my favorite songs. He looked at me and laughed. He looked so happy. I watched him and I thought, maybe if I try harder, I will love him. He is so kind. He is a good man. I felt a little hope. I told myself maybe it will be okay. I believed this was just a small problem in our marriage. But life is not always sunny. One Monday, I was walking in the town center. Suddenly, I froze. My heart stopped. Across the street, I saw a man. It was Ethan. He was taller than I remembered. He looked happy. He didn't see me. I stood there and my hands were shaking. I couldn't move. Julian was standing next to me. He saw my face. He looked at Ethan, then back at me. Julian didn't say a word. He didn't shout. He just took my arm and walked me away. His silence was heavy. I knew he was hurt, but I felt even more alone. That afternoon, I went to my shop. I sat in the corner for a long time. I picked up some white hydrangeas. They are beautiful, but they feel cold. I spent hours arranging them. I didn't think about Julian. I just watched the petals fall slowly to the floor. Everything was quiet. Too quiet. I took a deep sigh. My shop felt like a room with no windows. I walked home in the dark. I was wrong to think everything was fine. That was only the beginning, but the silence was about to break, and the reason was something I never expected Julian to ask. One Friday evening, the silence finally broke. Julian prepared a beautiful dinner at home. He lit candles and played soft music. He looked at me with a gentle smile. I tried to enjoy the food, but I felt empty inside. My heart was a dry desert, and I was just acting in a play. After dinner, Julian reached across the table and took my hand. His hand was warm, but mine was cold. He leaned forward and whispered, "Grace, I know you have been quiet lately. I want us to have a child. I think a baby will make your heart stay here with me. It will make us a real family." I froze. My fork hit the plate with a loud sound. It felt like a scream in the quiet room. My hands grew cold, and my throat felt dry. I couldn't move. Julian was full of hope, but I felt like I was drowning. I looked at the flickering candle and I thought, this is not right. I knew I had made a big mistake. I whispered to myself, how could I bring a child into a house built on a lie? Julian thought a baby would bring us closer, but I knew it would only make the lie bigger. I realized that my silence was a wall between us. I sat there in silence for a long time. Julian waited for me to say something, but my words were gone. I was scared. I was tired of pretending. I looked at my wedding ring and realized that I couldn't be the wife he deserved. How could I bring a child into a house built on a lie? I could not breathe. The air in our house felt heavy and cold. I knew I could not live a lie for one more day. I thought I could move on, but I was wrong. I went to the bedroom and reached into the back of the closet. In the dark corner, I found the old wooden box. It was full of Ethan's letters and photos. My hands were shaking as I held it. I felt like I was carrying a heavy bag of old pain. I walked into the living room. Julian was sitting there, waiting for me with a gentle smile. He was such a good man, and that made me feel like a terrible person. I placed the box on the coffee table. The sound was loud in the quiet room. Julian looked at the box, then at me. He looked confused and worried. I took a deep breath. I looked at the floor because I was too scared to look at his kind face. I whispered to myself, the truth will hurt, but you must say it. I knew I had to be honest. I looked up, and Julian's eyes were still full of hope. It broke my heart. "What is this, Grace?" Julian asked softly. I felt the tears start to burn my eyes. I took another deep breath and said, "I married you to forget him, Julian. But every time you touch me, I feel more alone." Julian did not move. He stood there in the middle of the living room, frozen like a statue. The warm yellow light from the lamp made the room look peaceful, but our world was falling apart. He did not shout. He did not get angry. He just stared at the box of another man's memories. Tears ran down my face like a river. I started to cry loudly. I fell to the floor because my legs felt like water. I had made a big mistake, and I knew I couldn't fix it with more lies. Julian stayed quiet for a long time. I felt the silence growing between us like a cold wall. I was finally breathing, but the air was full of sadness. Julian stayed quiet for a long time. I thought he would shout or get angry, but he didn't. He slowly walked to the coffee table and looked at the box. He touched Ethan's old letters with one finger. Then, he looked at me. His eyes were not angry. They were just very, very tired. "I knew, Grace," he said softly. His voice was trembling. "I knew you didn't love me, but I thought my love was strong enough for both of us. I thought I could make you happy if I gave you everything. I was selfish too." I froze. I never thought he knew the truth this whole time. I felt a wave of guilt hit my chest. I whispered to myself, he was hurting alone, and I was only thinking of my own pain. Julian sat down slowly on the sofa. He looked like he was losing a war. His shoulders started to shake. He didn't cry out loud, but I saw the deep pain in his body. The silence in the room was heavy. I stood by the window and watched him. For a moment, neither of us moved. The hope in Julian's heart was finally gone. I took a deep sigh. It felt like a heavy bag was finally falling from my back, but I had a heavy heart for him. Julian was a good man, but we were both trapped in a lie. We finally had to be honest. The next 7 days were the longest of my life. We lived in the same house, but we were like ghosts. Julian stayed in the main bedroom. I moved my things to the guest room. The house was finally quiet, but the air felt thin. There were no more flowers on Fridays. There were no more sweet notes or special dinners. The lies were gone, but the silence was heavy. Every night, I sat on the floor. I listened to the clock on the wall. Tick, tick, tick. I felt every second passing. I thought about my choices. I knew I could not fix what was broken. Julian was quiet too. Sometimes I saw him in the kitchen. We did not look at each other. My heart was a heavy bag, and I did not know how to put it down. On the last evening, Julian knocked on my door. I took a deep breath. My hands were shaking as I turned the handle. Julian stood there with a white envelope. He looked very tired, but his face was peaceful. He handed me the papers. They were for a divorce. He did not shout. He just said softly, "I love you enough to let you go find your own heart." I felt a heavy heart, but also a small hope. Tears ran down my face. I whispered to myself, "He is a truly good man." Julian nodded slowly and walked away. I sat on my bed and cried quietly. For the first time, the silence did not feel like a cage. I was ready to move on. 8 months passed slowly. I moved to a quiet town far away from the city and my old life. I opened a small flower shop near the coast. It is not fancy, but the walls are painted a soft yellow, and the air always smells like salt and fresh roses. This place is small, but it is mine. In the beginning, I felt very lonely. I thought about Julian every night. I wondered if he was sleeping well, or if he had found someone who could love him the way he deserved. He was such a good man, and I truly hope he finds peace. I also thought about Ethan. He actually found my new address and sent me a letter. My hands were shaking as I held the envelope. I felt my heart beat fast, but I did not open it. I knew that looking back would only keep me trapped in the past. I took a deep sigh, put the letter away, and realized I did not need Ethan to be happy. I don't feel like I am carrying a heavy bag anymore. I made a big mistake by marrying without love, but I finally learned how to move on. I learned that being alone is much better than living a lie. Today, I saw a tiny green sprout in a small pot on my windowsill. It was so small, but it looked strong. I felt a soft smile grow on my face. I whispered to myself, "You are growing, just like me." I took a deep breath and felt the warm sun. For the first time, I am not running. I am standing still, and I am okay. My story is not perfect, but it is real. I learned that love is not a medicine for a broken heart. You cannot build a home on someone else's pain. I thought I could move on using a beautiful lie, but I only hurt a good man. Always be honest with yourself, even when the truth hurts. Where are you listening from? It gives me strength to know you are hearing my words. Have you ever made a choice to run away from pain like I did? Please tell me in the comments. I would really love to hear your story. We often see these stories as just tales, but they are mirrors reflecting our lives in the modern world. Today, we often move too fast. We try to fix our pain with new things, new people, or big choices like marriage. But I realized that a wedding cannot cure a broken heart. The first lesson is about independence. Do not see another person as a rescue for your emotions. I thought Julian could save me, but I was only carrying a heavy bag into a new home. You must find your own strength before you share your life. The second lesson is about boundaries. Julian was a good man, but kindness without understanding can become an imposition. Honesty is more important than comfort. Never silence your heart just to make someone else happy. My advice is this: take time to heal before you start a new chapter. I learned that a heart needs its own spring before it can truly bloom again. Be patient and be brave. Don't make a big mistake by running away from yourself. You deserve a life built on truth, not a beautiful lie. If Grace's story touched your heart, please subscribe to Peak English Stories. Your support helps me share more real truths. Tell me your story in the comments below. Always be honest with your heart.